All right, you guys, 2024 Mazda CX-90, a little bit of a brake boost. And there's 60 miles an hour. Not too bad. That's the story here, you guys. Brand new engine, brand new CX-90. And what Mazda's basically done here, we'll get into all of it, they've taken the idea of what they did from the CX-5 to CX-50, and I've driven both of those. The CX-50 is my favorite mid-sized SUV right now. Not to be biased, I'm entering this with completely new eyes. I've never driven, actually, a CX-9. So take that into consideration. But they've done the same thing. The entire car looks completely different. This has about a 7-inch longer wheelbase than the CX-9. It's wider just a little bit. I mean, I'm talking 2 millimeters, if that, and it is a little bit longer as well. But the wheelbase is what we see when we look at the car. The entire body of the vehicle is completely new. It looks totally different. You see a little bit more of an executive looking vehicle just at first glance. It looks a little bit more premium just because of the dimensions, and I agree with it. I think the back end reminds me a little bit of earlier BMW X5s. It carries over the taillight look, the LED taillight look of the CX-5 and CX-50, which looks great here, but it looks incredibly muscular, and those vents in the front are actually functional. So if you like the look of it, you must like the way it drives, hopefully. Well, that's what we're here today to find out. So starting price for the CX-90 here in Canada, $46,000 Canadian, or about $41,000 USD. Here for the signature, top spec right here with literally every option you could possibly get. $66,000 Canadian, or about $61,000 if you're in the States, USD. But Mazda overall is trying to punch above their weight here. They're going for a more premium SUV. And where do you start with that? You start with how the vehicle feels. Inline 6 under the hood here, 3.3 liter. This is an all-new engine. Not only is this an all-new engine for Mazda, they've built this new 8-speed transmission all in-house. It's brand new transmission, engine, which makes the value of this even better, because it just shows this, hey, this is the cutting edge of what we're doing. And in Mazda's own words, we built this engine for enthusiasts. And we'll get to that in a second. So 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. So much torque. And paired with the 8-speed, the shifts are so much better. You know, I praised Mazda, or at least I kind of didn't take points off of cars like the 6 and the 3 for still having a 6-speed, because what it would do with less gears is have a tendency to just keep it in a higher gear and use the torque of the turbo to just carry the engine. So it wasn't hunting for gears all of the time like some of the other 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 speeds. I'm kidding. This is a great upgrade here, especially for a vehicle of this size. It shifts, for the most part, pretty good, although it's not totally consistent in all scenarios. Like there at high speed, full throttle, it's phenomenal. The shifts are virtually imperceivable, especially kind of mid to high throttle. It's very smooth, and that of course has to do also with the mild hybrid system here. An electric motor that provides up to 113 pound-feet of torque, but mainly what it's there for. See there, it took a couple seconds to shift down. Mainly what it's there for is to help with the smoothness of the vehicle and the efficiency. So if I'm coasting, it'll shut off until I come to a stop, and then when I get going, I'll feel the torque of the electric motor off the line, but this is where some of the inconsistencies with the transmission come out. Off the line is great. I feel the torque, but sounded like I was very excited about that. Off the line's fine. What I do feel though is that 1-2 shift sometimes is just a little bit jarring, and I shouldn't be able to feel kind of that motion, the torque unloading and offloading at low throttle, low speed. So sometimes I feel that. See, that was a lazy shift. But see there, then we get a perfectly smooth shift. So and I'm on the same road. Most of the time it's great. 90% of the time it is incredibly smooth. Thank you, Mazda, for doing this. They have built an inline six, inherently the smoothest engine ever. I'm so glad they didn't just bring over the 2.5 liter turbo engine here. We're going up against, in this group of vehicles here, big V6s, turbo V6s. We're going up against, in some cases, on the higher end, V8s. And then if you go to a vehicle like the XC90, you still get the 4-cylinder. And the difference is huge. The engine alone here sets the CX-90 apart from so many other vehicles. It's got an amazing sound to it. Unlike inline 4s, inline 6s don't require, for the most part, like a balance shaft or something to compensate for the imbalances, the imperfection of just the engineering design of an engine. So same with the Boxer engine, right? That's why Porsche GT3s sound and are so smooth, right? And Skylines and all the cars we know and love, basically all of the best cars that aren't V10s or V12s, right? Because of this, the natural layout of a longitudinally mounted inline six, it's a rear-wheel drive based platform now. And of course, standard, yes, all CX-90s come all-wheel drive, which is amazing, but inherently it is rear bias here. That's the thought. A little bit more of a kick, about 5,000. All right, so here it is, CX-90 in this artisan red metallic. It's kind of a maroon or red wine-ish looking color. I love it. They tried to set it apart from their metallic red, the bright red that's on a few other Mazda models. Now, of course, this is the top spec. This is the signature CX-90. So we get a few things that you don't get on any of the other models. One of those being a nice bright chrome inline six badge here. A few of the trim pieces are a little bit different. Most notably, however, you are only able to get these colored fenders right here, the fender liners, in body color if you go with the signature model, which I think is a big miss. But again, if you're going for that top luxury look, this is what I would want. I don't know about you guys. And then of course down here, you get this in chrome if you go with the top spec. I think it looks just phenomenal. Of course, you do get larger wheels here, 21-inch wheels, 275 wide tires all the way around. And we get this nice black grille up front here. God, I love the spec of this car. Of course, we have the optional tan leather here. This is just a great touch, of course, along with the two-tone steering wheel, which you only get on the signature model. This reminds me of an S-Class or something to that effect, even though it's not got that kind of wood finish around here. Two-tone, just those little things that separate it apart. Of course, as well, the suede on the dash. This is a great application, you guys, of suede or Alcantara. This is suede, where it's not going to be touched all that often. When it's on a steering wheel and you're not wearing gloves, as you wouldn't in a CX-90 unless you're part of a bank robbery or something, I don't know, it won't get worn out, but it's just visually appealing. It creates a little bit more of a warm feel. You also get this maple wood trim and the suede center inserts. The seats have been made a little bit stiffer this time around, which they're not to the level of Volvo or Polestar stiffness, which I can appreciate, but everything here is laid out phenomenally in the CX-90 versus the CX-9. I'm further apart from my passenger, so the center console here is much wider here. We'll start it up. A lot of physical controls they've changed, if you may have noticed. Okay, I'm here. I'm in park. Mazda, I do not need my seatbelt in park. Thank you very much. You may notice they've changed up the HVAC controls. Love this. Just one simple line of physical controls here. Ventilated seats too, which I might add are some of the quietest I've ever tested. Interesting thing about this center display, it is not a touch screen with exception. What do I mean by that? Well, in navigation here, I'm not able to pinch, I'm not able to zoom or do anything. It in fact tells me to hit the menu button for the menu. I can control everything from down here, which I love. Just 4 buttons, home, music, maps, and back here. Very easy to use. When I'm in Android Auto, if I'm in Spotify or something like that, then it becomes touchscreen. The only way it is touchscreen is if you're in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I found that very interesting. The interior is one indication that they're kind of punching above their weight and going after the Europeans. The second indication is just simply the fact that they built a brand new from the ground up inline 6. Here in an age where EVs are praised, where plug-in hybrids, by the way, you can get this in a plug-in hybrid, where those kinds of vehicles are praised, where Mazda's like, no, we're actually going to spend time trying still to connect with the driver in a vehicle that weighs a ridiculous amount. Oh, it is plenty quick though. So down here, of course, we can choose our drive modes with the Me Drive button. Just 3, nice and simple: off-road, normal, and sport. Little blow-off noise there. You will not be able to hear that on camera. It does have variable electronic steering weight, of course, here, so that's speed sensitive. Sport mode changes up the gauge clusters a little bit. Lots of red. Kind of matches the exterior here. And I like that the steering's a little bit heavier. You know, Mazda's not trying to really mask the weight. I kind of know what I'm gonna get going into the corners and feeling the weight transfer because the steering is a little bit heavier. And the suspension does communicate with me a little bit. It's not overly soft. In fact, I would say it's a little bit on the stiffer side, much like the MDX. Now, the title of this video is not actually meant to be an exaggeration. This is, in my opinion, the greatest engine that Mazda has built in the past 20 years. Why do I say 20 years? Well, of course, the FD RX-7 ceased production 21 years ago. Yeah, after that they made the RX-8, but they took the turbos off and it just was never the same. It was never the same. So that was the last great engine that Mazda built. And of course, yeah, they're bringing back the rotary, but it's effectively just gonna become a generator in the MX-30, which is a huge disappointment. This car got me thinking, what could Mazda do with this inline 6? And here's where my enthusiast mind goes. And this did not stem because I read that Mazda said that they built this engine for enthusiasts, although now that gives them a little bit more accountability here. But I'm just gonna let my mind go wild, okay? Let's say, you know, let's make a new model. You don't necessarily have to scrap the MX-5 in this scenario, but what I want you guys to build, what I would love to see out of this inline 6, would be a manual transmission, front engine, rear wheel drive, S2000 sized car. Because I think, I mean, obviously this engine would be completely ridiculous in an MX-5. I've driven a 400 plus wheel horsepower MX-5 and it was incredibly frightening, not safe for public consumption. But this, with a manual, tight suspension, S2000 kind of sized car with the Mazda name would be, if you're not gonna bring back the rotary, the perfect send-off for the Mazda enthusiast brand. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If Mazda doesn't do that, which they will never do that, mark my words, I'm off in some kind of fantasy land over here. Even if they didn't do that, the CX-90 is a great application for this engine. Just the hum of the engine, much better than what we would find in an MDX Type S, which we can compare. Now that base price is about $10,000 more than this. But again, you do get air suspension in that, you get a proper off-road mode, you can raise the vehicle. That Type S has proper torque vectoring, so it's a little bit more catered towards that 10/10 like hardcore driving experience, even though you have 3 rows, of course, massage seats on top of that as well, and a few other things. So they're completely different vehicles, but in terms of a 3-row SUV, you can see how Mazda is kind of creeping up closer to that competition. We can also compare it to a base Volvo XC90. All right, you guys, that's it. Hopefully I made my case here. The greatest engine Mazda's built over the past 20 years. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Hit me up on Instagram if you haven't already. Subscribe. We'll see you soon.